Hello, everyone.
Hello.
All right, we are just going to dive right in and start.
Hi.
Hello, everyone. My name is Mildred, and this is lesson 2 of week 18. In this lesson, we are going to clean up our files and create functions. And one thing that we want to do today that we did not do yesterday was create functions, remove some of these things, and put them in our utils file. And I want to also talk to you about validation of inputs. We didn't do that yesterday. Or also checking the record in the database if it already exists before we insert, because we want every user to be unique, things like that. So what I've done before this class is to just change the style a little bit so we can see clearly what we are doing. But this is not a front-end course, so we're not focusing on styling or creating the view or the front end. I just want you to be able to see what it is we are doing and how this interacts with the front end when like a front end developer wants to use the routes to create the look and feel for the end users. Okay, so we have this register route we created in yesterday's lesson. The link to the class has been uploaded, to the recorded class was uploaded last night, and I'm sure all of you got that link. You have to watch that before this so you can follow along, and we'll try just to do as much as cleanup so that we don't get so confused. And then in the last 2 lessons, which is tomorrow and Thursday, we will do the bulk of the app development. So we want to have this register route, and sometime we'll have a login route. So before we even do the login route, let's just create a login template before we start, so we'll get done with the template. So I've created a base file here already, and for us to just inherit stuff, and I link this to Bootstrap. Well, that's what we're using for the style. We're not focused on it, like I said earlier. So let's do the login route, and we'll extend the base file. So we end block here. So we want to have a route that will handle the login. So let's just put the action to be the login route before we create it later. And then we want to say the method is equal to post. We want to have, let's say, they will enter their email. Let's say input type is email, name is email, and let's put some style, and I'll do that for the password. Then we'll have the submit button. Okay, we have a login form, and when we come back here, let's make sure that the login is not working yet because we don't have a route for login, but we've created the form. So what we want to do is create the user and then the form. Another thing I want us to do here is to not use the simple crypt encryption that we were using previously. We'll just go straight to use the normal hash lib, and we'll try to use the hash the password, and we're going to use the secret key that we set to make it more secure. All right, so we can delete this because we don't want to use it, and then we can come here and delete this because we don't want to use it. So we're going to delete whatever it is that we will not use, but we will edit it. So later on, we can actually move all of this sensitive information to the environment file, but for now we'll keep it here. I change the password after each lesson. Before I upload, I will have to change the password for security reasons. So I change that password, and I think this should be the new password. So we want to change this to be functions, like this register. We don't want to have to do all of this. We want a particular function to handle this. So we have a function for register, we have a function to send email, and then when we come to confirm here, we have a function to update the user's credential, so that when we get to a point where you want to do forgot password and so, we use the same function to do the same thing. So we want to do that in the utils file here. So now what we want to do now is to edit this file and create these functions. The first thing we want to do is to create a function for sending emails, so that we can use it in the register user function and the update user function. Okay, so recall that we said we're going to do functional programming as much as possible. So we know we are going to encrypt the password and maybe the user's email, and we want to use hashlib for that. So we're going to import hashlib like this. We're going to import settings because we need things from the settings file. We're also going to since we are going to do the mail, let's take this from here, this Flask mail here, and let's import it here. Then also we want to import from the models file, because we are going to be using the table. So we have the users here. Let's import that one. So let's stop, and then we'll import as we go along when we find something that we need. So we want to create an object of that mail, and we'll do this like this, and then we want to start creating the functions. So later on, or maybe in tomorrow's lesson or the one after, we'll look at how to test all of these functions. I hope we have the time. We have just 2 lessons left, so we'll try to do as much as is possible. So we already have the insert data that we use to insert records into the database table, and it can work for any table that you want to insert records into. Now what we want to do is to create one to send email. So let's say def send mail, and when we want to send email, we want to send the email address of the user. We want to have that as an argument, the sender of the person who is sending the email, the subject, and also want to have the body of that's the message, so we'll call it the body. So what do we do with this? Just like we have it here on the app file, I think it's still the same thing we're going to do here. So let me remove this, and this is all. We're still going to be doing the same thing here. I think we're doing the same thing. So it's almost all of this stuff we'll do. Let me just copy it, and I'll bring it here, then we'll edit it. So what I want to do here is to say the message is equal to subject. Now, instead of me to hard code what the subject is, the sender, and the email recipient, I have to do it like this, so I can use this function to send any email, and not only emails when an account is created. And so that's why it has to be an argument that is passed when this function is called. So we'll get the subject, the sender, the recipient. And then we want to come here to put the body will be equal to body, and we don't want it to be a hard-coded message like this. Okay? So when we call the function, then we'll supply this hard code as arguments to it. And then we want to say mail.sendMessage, and because this is a function, we want to return true if everything is successful. And so we'll say return true. Okay. So is it clear?
Yes, it is.
Okay. So the next thing we want to do now is to create the register user function. And for this, we want to pass the email, the role, and the code as arguments when we call the function. And so we'll say def register. And what we want to do here is just same thing as we had here when we use the insert data function here to insert. So this is what we're going to be doing here. We'll insert, and then we'll send the email. So let's do it like this. Since we don't want to use the simple crafts, we want to hash, right? We want to first of all validate. What we did not do yesterday was to check if the user already exists, so that we don't insert twice or we don't create the same account twice. So I want to verify first that the user already exists, whether the user exists or not, before we insert that into the database table. And then we want to encrypt both the email and the password for security reasons, right? But we're not using password here. We want the activation email to send to the user a link to activate and set their password. So let's just use the hash. Let's say hash email. I'll just call it hash is equal to email, and let's use the secret key. And then email, encrypted email is going to be this. And then we want to use with engine. So we want to check, and we can actually do this as a different function. I'm just thinking about it now, where we can actually create a function that checks if a record already exists. That is for tables that we want to insert record to, and we want each record to be unique. We can actually create a function that checks for uniqueness of it. Or we can just do this here for now, but I'm just letting you know that we can actually go further to create more functions from what we're doing now. So I can just say with engine.connect, so I can check for the user. If the user that I want to insert, that email already exists in the database table, I want to check. If it exists, I don't want to insert that record into it. Maybe I'll just remind the user that check your email to activate the account. This account has already been previously created or something like that. And if it doesn't exist, then I want to insert. So what I'm doing here is to connect, create a connection object. That's the engine. And then we execute this statement. We don't want to insert. So say connection.execute. I want to select, not insert. So I will select where. Let me delete this. This was autocomplete, so sometimes you need to read it. So I'll use where, and I think we have to put a table name. The table dot the name of the column is email, and when it's equal to this email. So we have to encrypt the email first because it's in plain text, because what we stored in the database is encrypted. So we need to encrypt whatever the user passes in to compare it against the value in the database. If not, if we compare plain text against the encrypted value, we will get that it does not exist. So we'll do this comparison, and if it exists, we want to check if the row count is greater than 0, it means it exists. So we'll say if let's make this one to say result is equal to, so that we can say if result, we can refer to this. So result is equal to the connection.execute. We want to select all from the users table where the email is the email that is passed here as the argument. We want to say that if this result contains any row, so let's say if result or row count is greater than 0, not equal to now, is greater than 0, we want to use this insert data function, and then we will insert data into the users table, and we're going to be inserting the email. The password is still going to be blank because we have not created a password yet, or we can decide not to even include it here, since we can leave it as null. So we'll do the email, the row, and the code. Okay, the code will be the code that is passed in here as that. And once that is done, we want to call the sendMail function. So now we can see that we are using these two functions we created before the register user. So I will now say sendMail, and the sendMail, we have parameters email, sender, subject, and body. So we're going to send mail. Let me use keyword argument email, and then I'll say the sender. I've not put this in my environment file, so I will just hard code it. So it's better this is in the environment file, so that when you want to change, you change in only one place. Imagine you have to come back to this function every time this changes, or the password or the email that you use to send these changes. Okay, but we're going to do this, and I'll leave you to do that. So let's say the subject is activate your account, and then the body will have click on this link to activate your account, and we want to put the link We get the DB host, which is local host. The port that we're connected to is 8080 here. So local host is 127.0.0.1. That is always the IP address of local host. And we want it to go to the activate route and pass the email and the code as a parameter. So what we are going to use here is not going to be the encrypted email, but the email, the raw email or the plain text email that was passed in, because we are sending an email not to the encrypted email. It won't find that address. We're sending it to the real email of the person. So you see how we have used functions to make these things shorter here. So what we need to do now is to either return true or false. If it works, we return true. So we return true because this has this is what we wanted to return as. When you insert this record, return true. So the first thing we did is to check if the user already exists. If it already exists, we don't want to do anything. So here, let's return false. If it already exists, we'll return false. And then else, we return true. Else we do this and return true. So let's do that like this. So sorry, I'm trying to think while I do this at the same time. So let me go back once. Okay, so let me explain this again. So what I'm trying to achieve here is to take out the function, some of this code here, and make them functions that we can reuse across different routes and functionalities. The first one we did was the send mail function that we created. We want this send mail function to be available for use whenever we want to send mail, regardless of the route or the page that we want to send the mail to. So when you call this function, you have to pass in the arguments, the email, the sender, the subject, and the body. We now created a function called register users. This takes the email, the role, and the code. We are going to pass this in, or when we call this register user function from any file, we're going to pass in all of this required information. We always know that the engine, we create the engine using, the engine is always the app.config. I think the engine is always, yeah, this app.config, SQLAlchemy database URI. We are going to pass this as the engine when we call that function. So we have that done here, and we say if we want to check first of all if the email that for the new account to be created already exists in the database, we want to return false, which means don't insert that record in the database and don't send any email. But if it does not exist, then we want to call this insert function here to insert that record in the database, and also call the send mail function to send an email to the user to activate the account. So we'll try this out. So first of all, before we can try it out, let's edit the app file so that we can use the function instead of using the code the way it was. So here we want to change things now, which means we are going to be encrypting. We might be encrypting information, maybe not now, but we might need it. Let's just put that here. Import hashlib. I like to do my imports or think of what I might do. So from the utils file, we want to import the functions. So from utils, I want to import register user function. From utils, import register user. I also want to import settings. Let me take this up. I like to put my import up and then all the from. We might not be using this anymore because we'll be doing that from the utils file. And then I'm not sure if we'll use the Flask mail. I've already removed that. So let me put this here. Let's say from Flask mail, import mail, and we'll not use message. I'm not sure we'll use this, but at the end, whatever we don't use, we'll take out. Okay. So for the create app, we already did all of this yesterday. we had all of the server or the mail server settings here, and then we created the register route. So what I want to do with this register route is to remove the code and call the functions and pass the arguments to the function call. So I'm going to start here by, first of all, encrypting this. There's something else that you should do whenever you collect input from end users. You want to sanitize that input, and when we say sanitize, you want to make sure that scripts cannot be passed that will crash your system or break into your database. There are many ways to do that. We won't get into that. I want you to reset that, but I'll just do something like just strip the stuff here. So let's say I'm going to do a minimal sanitization of the input. So you research it. There are even many functions or libraries that you can use also. So let's say we're stripping the email. The email is the only thing that the user is entering. So I'll strip the email, and I will check if the value is entered for the email and the role is selected before I check. So there are many checks you have to do. So one of the things you need to do when you write your algorithm is to say, I want to extract the value entered by the user from the form. I want to sanitize this input and make sure that it is not a script that is being passed in to be able to break into my system or to be able to commit any type of activity that is not authorized. Then I want to check the required fields if they are filled in. Then I want to check, are these records supposed to be unique? The role of the data, is it supposed to be unique, or can we allow duplicates? You want to check if it already exists, what you do if it already exists, and what you do if it doesn't exist. So let me just do some minimal checks. So these are the algorithm you need to write down. That's whenever you are processing a form input, these are the steps you need to follow. There are other steps you might want to follow based on whatever data or the kind of systems that you are building. So I'll say if not email. So that means if email is not entered, or if the role is not selected, I want to render template. I'll just say let's say response is email and role are required. I'll render template response of HTML and send that response to that file. Then I'll come here and then I'll say, let me delete all of this so that we don't get confused, because we're going to change this. All of this, we're changing this. So let's delete this. So we checked to see if this email and role are selected, or the email is entered and the role is selected. And if it's not, give them the response page to say that the email and role are required and they should go back and fill the form again. Then we want to auto-generate the code, which we have done here. And we said yesterday that this is just how we use random to generate code that we want. And I put k equal to 6 because I wanted a 6-digit code. You can make it 10, 11, whatever you want. There are many ways to generate unique codes in Python. Then I want to also say, and I'll take note that we are not using some of the Flask inbuilt functions or things from the Flask library. We are trying to do as much Python as possible so that across frameworks, your code will still be correct. So we want to say, we'll call the register user function here, and we'll pass the engine, we'll pass the email, we'll pass the role, and we'll pass the code. Now recall that when we created this function here, we allowed the encryption to be done in the function, so we don't have to bother about encrypting it when we call it. And so we just use one line of code to register the user. So this one will handle, because it's coming from a function, this handles inserting the record into the database table and sending the email to the user. So once this is done, we want to render templates. So let's say response is equal to registration successful, check your email to activate your account, and render template response.html, and we'll do this. Or we can even render template login.html if we want. But let's send everything to the response, and when you get deeper, we can actually put a redirect where it will send the message and redirects to a page, or you want to just redirect to a page. But we'll do that in tomorrow or Thursday's lesson. So we've done this. Hopefully it's correct, and we're going to test this when we let's look at the other functions first, then we'll test all of this so that we'll see which is wrong and which is correct. We already have the activate route that doesn't have codes in them. We don't even need the email here because we just activate using the code, right? And then we have the confirmed route, which uses aha. So we are going to edit this one. Now we want to change most of this, and because this is updating the users table, it's updating that row of information, updating the password, and it uses the same values or the same columns that we'll normally use whenever we forget password and we want to reset our password. So let's create a function that we can actually use to reset password later on. If you do create a forgot password link on your login page, that function will be useful. So let's go to the utils file again, and let's create a new function that we will use to edit that. So this is what functional programming is all about. You want to use functions to do as much of the functionalities as possible and return you a value. Okay, so we'll say def update password. So it's very easy when you do functional programming to maintain that system, because when the functions change, when the functionality of that system changes in the future, you come and edit or update the function or the function definition, and then automatically everywhere it is used, the functionality is changed. So it makes, for me, there is no one better than other. Like if you use object-oriented programming, or you use functional programming, or you use any other type of programming paradigm, there's no one better than the other. But you have to look at what your specification, non-technical requirements are. If you're looking at the speed, you're looking at how to optimize your code, you're looking at the maintenance of the system later on. So these are the things you consider before you decide what you want to do. But personally, I prefer functional programming even to object-oriented programming for most of my programming assignments. Okay, but no one is better than the other, so you just have to follow requirements. So here we want to make sure we do all of our encryption here so that we can easily change the encryption type. So if you are using AES encryption or much higher unbreakable encryption method, it will be easy to change. So we are just going to be using hashlib just to make things faster, and I want to encrypt it. So let's say password hash is going to be because we have to encrypt for us to be able to compare with the record in the table, the database table, because we encrypted before we stored them. So we'll say password hash is equal to password plus settings. So we have to encrypt it just the same way we encrypt. If we change whatever you add here, let's say it's not use secret key, we'll use some random numbers or random text, then you are not going to be encrypting or decrypting from plain text to the ciphertext correctly. So we'll do this, and then we'll say the password is equal to password hash.hex digest. Just know that this is how you encrypt your work. Okay, so the password that is passed here as an argument when this is called is what we are going to encrypt before we check the database if that actually exists. So we want to, so we can do something. You can decide to check if that record even exists. You can decide to pass an email here to check, but we are going to optimize this code and just keep all of that. And what we're going to do is to just go straight to update that record. So when we do that, we will say we're going to be updating the users table where the code is equal to the code passed in here as the user. We'll say we'll just leave activated set to true. I don't even think this is necessary. I'm just wondering. I don't think that is even necessary because we're just updating the password. So when a user forgets password and the user wants to update the password, we want to check where the code equal to code. We're updating the password of that. We're updating the password for that user. Okay, We'll check if this is correct. I don't know why I feel something might be wrong here, but we'll check. Okay, so we've done this as a function. Let's see where we can change it here before we test, and then we'll create the login route and see whether when we create a user, we can successfully log in that user. So when we come back to the confirmed route here, let's just delete this and say from here, let's delete this from there. So what we want to do here is, I think we'll have to encrypt this password here too. We'll encrypt the password and we'll be able to let's encrypt the password, because I think we have to encrypt the password and then we'll be able to call that function. Let's try this first, then I'll think about it again and make sure what I'm thinking about is correct. So password hash, and then we will have the code is result code, okay. So we have the code from that will be passed in. So we're coming from the verifier and it will be passing as a hidden field, okay. And then here, let's see where we update. We use the update password here. Update password. So we'll say update password. We want to pass the engine, the code, and the password. We have to call that, we have to put the function here, update password. Okay. And then we want to render template. We want to say the response will be account activated successfully. Let's see. Response is equal to activation successful. And then we render template and response. So let's try this out before we even go so far and we're able to retrace our step. Okay. So what we did here was we changed things to use more functions. We created functions for send email, we created the register user function, we created the update password function, and then we're going to come here, run this, and then come here and refresh this. And what we want to do is, let's come back here and delete any record that is here so we can recreate new ones. So I'll delete this, and I want to get an email when this is done. So let's register a user with an email, and I'll choose the role to be admin, submit. So when the success message with green, we can't see the message because maybe this is not in the container to display our message properly. So we can edit this from the response template. So let's come to the template and come to the response and block content here. And here we'll end block title. And let's see. So we have that here. Let's check. It was inserted. There was no password. Activated is 0. We want to check the email. We have the activation email. We click on this link. We set the password. And we submit. And we have the message. I have not changed this for us to see what the message is. But we can see it's a green banner. So it's always for success message when it's green based on what we set there. But I think there's an overlap with this. So we have to do the settings of the margin and padding and all that for front end. But we'll check to see if this updated. So we got the email updated, but activated is not set to true here. And so that is where, that's where activated needed to be set to true in the update here. So let's go back to our update function. And yes, so here, values, activated equal to true. And so whenever we update, then activated should be set to true. Okay. So what we can do here is to create another user, or delete this user and test again. I'll come to the base file. Let's look at the base here. Okay. Okay, we want to create a new user now and want to get the new email and everything. So we've deleted this. Let's try to come back to register user. I'll create the same user since I deleted the record. And the role is client and create. So we still have the same padding and margin. I'm going to ignore it. We'll just make sure the record goes where it is since we're not doing the front end code. And then we come here to see if we have a new activation. Yeah, we have a new one. And I'll set the password. And we'll check back to see. And activated is now 1. So this is working as expected. We've changed everything to use functions, and if you look carefully and you come here on a new day, you will see that there are still more functions that can be created to reduce the code on the app file. And our utils file will just be a file that holds maybe helper functions and things like that. So when we have these functions, we know that we can use it even when it is not for the same app. So when you have all these functions that are reusable across different apps, you can just edit them if your column names or your table name change or something like that, but it's going to be reusable across different kind of applications that you create. So this is the reason why we're not using most of the inbuilt Flask functions or so we can see how to create our function so that regardless of framework, you'll just be fine. Anybody with a question before we try to do the login and see if that will work? Okay, do you all understand?
Kind of. I'm a little lost because I entered a little bit late, but yeah, I kind of understand what's happening. So I'll revise a little bit later. Thank you so much.
All right. So we created a login form already, and on this form, we want a login route to process the data that is entered here. We want to collect the email and the password. The names of the input field are email and password. We will come here to create a login route so we can display the form. So let's do that here. So let me say app.route login, get a post. So I want to say if the request method is post, we want to process the data, if not, render the template. So say if request equal to post, we want to get the values entered into the form, the email and the password. We also want to check if we don't want to render this template here, so let's say render it there if it's not post. Then here we want to check if the email and password are actually entered. So say if not email or not password, we want to send a message on that response template to say that email and password are required. But if it is there, we might want to sanitize the inputs. Let's say we do email.strip. So there are many ways to sanitize, better ways to check for every type of attacks that we can have from the end user and sanitize your inputs based on those different criteria. But we'll just do something basic, just as a placeholder for you to know these are the process you need to follow. So we have this route. We want to create a function, and we want the function to be called maybe user login, right? Let's stop here because we need to create that function before we come here and use it to log the user in. So let's create a function here, and we'll call that function user login, and we want to pass in the values that the user enter as arguments when we call that function. And so we'll say user login. So it is going to take the engine, email, and password. So what we want to do first of all is to encrypt the email and encrypt the password, since I think they were encrypted when we created when we registered the user. We encrypted the email, and when we verified on the other route, let's see, I think we encrypted the password too. Yeah, and the password was also encrypted. So let's encrypt them to be able to check. So we'll come here and say, let's say hash is equal to this hash email is equal to email plus settings plus secret key, and then let's just use this for the email, and we'll say email. Then let's do for the password. So I'll say password hash, and I want to now connect to the database and now check the table if the email this user entered is equal to the email that is any email in any row of the database table, and the password if both of them match. So I'll say with engine.connect as con, I want to check if I want to select from the table where the email is equal to email, the encrypted one, and the password is equal to the encrypted password. If it is true, so we'll say if it is true, so we have to say this has to be not greater than, it has to be equal to 0. So if the result dot row count is equal to 0, return true, else return false. Okay, so what we are doing here is select from there where the email matches and the password matches. If we go and we get the match, so I think it has to be greater than 0, not equal to. I'm wondering if greater than 0 will work. It's supposed to be equal to. So when we are trying to see if it already exists, we use if greater than 0, that means it exists. So let's try it that way, return true, or the else return false. So let's do this and see. If not, we'll revise it. I'm a little confused trying to think and talk at the same time. Okay, so we get the function. We'll try to get the function here, and it's user login, and then we'll use the function here. So now we want to say, we want to change this to be we want to use the user login here and say if user login, okay, we want to pass the engine email and password, response login successful. If it returns true, login successful, and if it returns false, login failed. I think we have it backwards, but let's see. Save this, and we'll come here to refresh our page. So we'll go to the login template. We'll try here to say I want to put in my username. This, we really need to see the message this time, so I have to correct whatever it is that is making this not to display at the top here. So we'll have the base file here, the body, let's use the Flask container. Let's close this. For the login, we have container. I think I'll put the container out. And let's close this here. And then for the response, so let me come here to see. For some reason, we still have that happening there. Not having this display the way it should. Okay, so you get the idea. We just need to make sure that we can see the message that is displayed on the page. We want to be able to see it properly. And we use container here. I'm wondering why this is not displayed here properly. Normally this container should be able to. Oh, this is where the problem is. I don't think that is the problem. That is not the problem. Okay, we can't see that message, but I want us to be able to see the message, to see whether it's saying login successful or login failed. Let's see whether this will change the way the response is. No, it is not. Sometimes you have to clear cookies because the style is already set there. I'm not sure if that is the issue here, but I want to be able to see this. And maybe for now, I will take off the navigation just so that we can see that. And so I don't have to clear cookies and have to enter password all over again. So I'll just take this out for now and see without that whether we can see that. So hopefully we should be able to see the message that will be displayed there. So let's try to log in. And we'll say login, and we still can't see the message that is displayed. We need to be able to see that. I want us to know what it is that is displayed. So this was not the issue. Response. Oh, here is result and not response, so we're not seeing that. What we are passing here is response and not result. So say response. That is the problem. So we have it login failed. We can see it properly. It's saying login failed. Whatever I entered was correct. So login failed just means that I was skeptical about this part. When we looked at the login, I think it should be equal to 0. And you should have login successful. That's what we want to have. And I want to enter the wrong one. And let me have login failed. So I have to enter a wrong email now. So we're getting successful, so that is wrong. So it has to be this is where the confusion is. We are checking if this is equal. If it's equal, return the row, right? And when it returns the row, we should have equal to 1, not 0. If it's equal to 1, return true. That means something is there. If not, return false. So let's see, that's all. It's just in the understanding of this. I'm a little bit confused. Either we are using equal or 1. So let's see. It's supposed to be 1, not 0, because we are checking if it's successful or not. So lovelyie@gmail.com. I'll use the correct one. We should get successful message. Login failed. So now there's a problem with this, with the way I'm thinking about this. So we check if the email column is equal to what is encrypted, and the password is equal to the encrypted password. If result.row count is it greater than 0? So who can tell us now? Is this supposed to be greater than 0 or less than 0? Or let's just say if result, let's not even bother to count the row. So if result, if you get any result, return true. If result, return true, else return false. So these are one of the places that as a beginner you might get stuck in. And today I seem to be more confused. And let's use the wrong email and password to see return false. And it still says successful. So this check if result dot row count, let's use greater than 0. Result failed. I think it's the greater than that I was supposed to use from the beginning, but let's see. I'll use the correct one. It's still saying login failed. So I'm going to figure out why this is acting like this, or we'll change this like that, and in tomorrow's lesson we'll pick it up from this place. But does everybody understand exactly what we're trying to achieve?
Yes, and I wanted to.
You said?
I wanted to suggest if maybe we use the not, maybe not equal to. The exclamation, the row is not
equal to 0. Okay, so let's log in again. Let's use the correct one, and then we say the correct password, and it still failed when it's correct. Let's do it the wrong one. It still failed. Both of them is failed. We get the app file. Let's see. The response is login successful. If user create engine email and password, response is else, response login failed. So figure out exactly what it is. Syntactically, it seems that what we are doing is supposed to be correct. I don't know why the response we are getting is wrong. There must have been a little mix-up in one of these places. I will debug that, or maybe we'll debug it in class together tomorrow, so we don't get this lesson longer than the hour allocated for it, and we might just pick up from there. So I want you to see how this is debugged. So I think I will wait until the class tomorrow for us to debug this login, so we can see, because this might be a common error or something that you might encounter along the way. So we will do this in class tomorrow, and then we're going to look at something. Instead of having a response login successful or login failed, if there's a match, we want to now do something. We have said from the beginning of the app that we are doing role-based access, right? And we want people to be able to have access to different functionalities based on their assigned role. So which means that each of these roles might have a home page or a different home page, or a way that we control what functionality or drop-down menu each user sees based on the role that they are assigned. So we are going to look at this tomorrow and see where the login leads all the users to based on their assigned role. Does anyone have any question?
No, thank you very much.
All right, so I'll try to get the recording out as soon as possible, at least before the end of the day, so you can catch up before we meet tomorrow. Thank you, everyone, and see you all tomorrow.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.